Very good morning. You're watching NewsX and I'm Shivani Singh. Now, Donald Trump has arrived in Beijing for a high-stakes two-day visit where he is all set to meet his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping. Now, the US President's first official engagement today is an arrival ceremony with President Xi at Beijing's Great Hall of the People. Now, the two leaders will then hold bilateral talks followed by a state banquet this evening. Key issues on the agenda include tariffs, technological competition, the war in Iran, and the situation in Taiwan. Let me, in fact, go across to my colleague Yash Ahuja, who will, in fact, give us some more details regarding this visit. And we are playing out those visuals where President Trump is in China. He is in Beijing. The red carpet was rolled out for him. Yash, what more information can you tell us? When is this meeting expected to start?
Yes, Shivani, the visuals that we see on our screens right now are coming in straight from the capital of Beijing in China. This is the first meeting first official visit of a sitting US president in decades, making it second of Trump. That's the United States president walking out of his car, meeting the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping outside the Great Hall. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. This is the moment why we are here. Trump meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping. It's the biggest two world's biggest economies, world's greatest superpowers meeting, coming together on one stage to discuss things like trade, to discuss things like the war, with a high-profile US delegation including business leaders like Elon Musk, Tim Cook, Hensen Huang. This summit features grand ceremonies at sites like the Temple of Heaven and the Great Hall of People that we see right now on our screens. This is US President Donald Trump meeting with the Chinese top officials along with Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. You know, this also reflects the enduring personal chemistry between the two leaders, even as underlying structural rivalries in critical minerals, AI, Indo-Pacific security continues.
Absolutely, Yash. In fact, when we're looking at, the personal equation between these two leaders, Trump has always touted the relationship as being quite strong. However, over the years, we've seen that, there have been certain disagreements and tariffs that have been rolled out by the United States against China. And there you have it. You can also see the Chinese president, in fact, meeting all those US officials who are present along with the US President Donald Trump. And remember that apart from this being a very historic state visit, this in fact is also a very important economic visit for both the countries, because trade is on the agenda. We're talking about $500 billion of a Boeing deal that the US might want to crack. We are talking about agricultural deals that the US might want to look at. There is also the talk of a trade negotiating table that might be formed in order to bypass the tweet tariff route that the trade industry is really facing over the past few years. So this is a very important historic visit. Like my colleague Yash mentioned, that two of the biggest economies of the world together talking about trade, talking about war, which has in fact, destabilized the world a little over the past few months as well. And these two leaders will be in fact discussing a host of issues. And remember, this is very significant. There you have it, those visuals. You can see the bonhomie between both these individuals, both the presidents, the president of China and US President Donald Trump. And this is also symbolic because this is the Great Hall of the People. And this actually, signifies how China is giving this visit such an importance, such a significance, because this hall is giving out only for certain specific meetings, and this is the meeting hall where in fact Trump and Xi will be taking forward their talks. Let me in fact go across to Mr. Sanjeev Srivastava, who's a foreign affairs expert who's joined us on this broadcast as well early this morning. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out your time and for speaking to NewsX. We appreciate it. Sir, I want to understand from your perspective as well, how significant is this meeting between US President Donald Trump and the Chinese president when we look at things apart from trade?
Well, first of all, a very good morning to you. Good morning to all the viewers. I think this visit of US President Donald Trump to China is of enormous significance, and it is happening after a substantial gap. Last visit was in the year 2017 when President Trump went there to China, and now he is visiting at this point of time. And when both the leaders are meeting, President Trump and President Xi Jinping, whole world is giving a close watch to it because U.S.-China relationship is a major power relationship, and these two largest economies and two nuclear power nations, and obviously a very big power in the global affairs, both the nations. The kind of status they have, this meeting might have enormous significance for the whole world. And at this point of time, US and China, they are going to be deliberating upon various key issues, as you yourself have mentioned, like trade, technology, tariff, Taiwan, Iran, and many other issues related to Indo-Pacific region and global affairs will be discussed, and a comprehensive review will take place between both the sides when the both high-level delegations level meeting will happen, and obviously the one-to-one meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping will happen, and during that meeting, all those issues will come under discussion. And I believe that this US-China relationship has a very clear, elements of competition, contestation, even at some areas rivalry. But at the same time, both the leaders, both the nations, both these major powers would also like to seek some cooperation with each other. And there are several issues where both the nations will try to come up with some, understanding and some consensus. Like, for example, the issue of Iran, and in particular on this Iranian front, the normalization of the Strait of Hormuz is one of the issues where both the nations would like to seek some cooperation with each other, and they would like to develop some sort of consensus with regard to having a normalization in the Strait of Hormuz, because Strait of Hormuz is such a vital choke point and a trade route, international waterway for the whole world. China is very heavily dependent on the Strait of Hormuz. US economy, though they are not as dependent, but they are also getting impacted because of the kind of a blockade Iranian Islamic regime has imposed on the Strait of Hormuz, and the whole world is impacted. Entire energy supply chains of the world has been severely impacted because of the blockade and the counter naval blockade of the US. So I think several initiatives like collecting toll tax, etc., which is being done by Islamic regime of Iran, is again a violation of the international laws. And I believe that both the United States of America and China would not like to see any such kind of imposition of the toll tax, etc., in the international waterways. And I believe that on that front, both the nations, both the leaders are on one page. And I think after this meeting between the President Trump and President Xi Jinping, some consensus will emerge and more cooperation will emerge between the US and China on the question of Strait of Hormuz. And certainly President Trump would like to see China more putting more pressure on the Islamic regime to come to the negotiating table as early as possible, and particularly on the Strait of Hormuz, Chinese pressure on Islamic regime might work. Also, I would like to say that when this first round of talks between the US and Iran happened in Islamabad, I think for that talk to have at least some sort of direct interaction between the US and Iran, China played a very important role, though they played that role from the back channel only, but that role was there. Pakistan's role has been of a messenger only, and Pakistan cannot play a greater role than a messenger in this entire US-Iran talks. But the China's role and Russian roles will be very crucial, and President Trump would certainly like to seek more cooperation from China's side to put a greater pressure on Iranian Islamic regime so that they come to the negotiating table as early as possible, and in particular they normalize this Strait of Hormuz as early it could be possible. So I think that was one area, the Iranian question, where the US and China might have the same kind of views. But having said that, on the other front, with regard to Taiwan, with regard to the Indo-Pacific region, and also issues related to trade, technology, and tariff, there might be differences between the two sides. But as I said, both the nations have this relationship of the contestation, cooperation, competition, etc. So all those things will play out in other issues. But yes, on the issue of Iran, there might be some consensus emerging between both the sides.
Absolutely, Mr. Srivastava. I'll come back to you. Also joining us, in fact, on the broadcast is Ambassador Gauri Shankar Gupta, who's a former diplomat. Ambassador, a very good morning to you, and